Call to order the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Committee meeting here on March 9th, 7 o'clock. First, start off with the recognition. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Ishan. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Albany tribe. We thank them for their contributions which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth community and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. First on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Are there any comments or questions about the minutes? Someone want to?
I'm happy to move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you. Second? I second. Isabel, can you take count?
Well, okay, so Commissioner Abbott,
Yes.
Commissioner Bensman,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank, Commissioner Martin,
Yes.
and Chair Kent.
Yes. The minutes have been approved. Any announcements from the staff or commissioners? Any announcements? Nothing new, commissioners?
Yes,
Or
so
staff?
did you have,
We often public comments first, but for
Um,
announcements, I'm just looking at the agenda, that's all.
You're right. You jumped right-
Sorry, I
you're
just-
right,
oh,
absolutely
you're,
right.
you're right, yes, yes.
I'm sorry, I
I think you were being that, yeah, I jumped right over that. Isabel, is there anyone waiting to give public comment?
You know, I've lost connection, so Josh, can you let anybody in if there are in?
Good evening, Jeremiah Garrett Pinguello here. So, yeah, thank you for, reopening the dog park. I appreciate it. I recently got myself a puppy and, I went to the dog park on a nice day recently. And it was really nice. It was my first time there. There's a bunch of other people. It's a nice community. Glad to be part of it, to tell you the truth. I didn't realize how close knit dog owners, dog people really are. It's a really nice, friendly group. I don't know if Mike Hurley's in the room, but I attended another public meeting earlier this week. I forget which one it was. I attend so many, but I had 3 positive suggestions to improve the dog park, and one thing I noticed when I first got there, trying to get in, people were like, "Wait, don't open the gate yet because I don't want my dog to run out." So there was this kind of, I don't know, how to open the gate. People had to, get their dogs. So I had this idea of kind of like, I don't know how else to describe it, but more of like an airlock, kind of like a double gate sort of thing, to where you can open up one gate, but the other gate is closed. So that way, like a 2-way gate. So if you open, there's always a gate that's closed kind of thing. I mentioned it earlier in a public meeting, and Mike Hurley came on and spoke, and he said, yeah, that's the best way to describe it, is an airlock sort of gate. But anyway, so that was one of them. And then also I noticed there was no garbage can. And there was a garbage can on the other side of the fence, and I saw some people flinging their doggy poop bag up over the fence to try to make it land in the garbage can. The person made it, but yeah, so maybe a garbage can would be really good in the dog park, along with some bags. Everybody had bags. Actually, I borrowed a bag from somebody, so now I got to get my own bags, I guess. But So yeah, so a garbage can with bags would be nice. And also, what else did I notice? Oh yeah, a drinking fountain. A drinking fountain for dogs. That could be really good use of the sugar sweetened beverage tax. Maybe I'll make a public comment about that later. But yeah, so basically I noticed it would be nice to have some water. I think Mike Hurley said the issue is plumbing or a water line, but I don't know. Memorial Park has sprinklers to water the grass. So we could always just, install a water line somewhere. But yeah, so those are my 3 positive suggestions to improve it. Just an airlock, a garbage can, and some water. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Memorial Park, Dog Park, Memorial Park.
That's it.
That's it for the public. So bringing it back to the commission, any, was I asked before? Nothing? Staff, any comments? Any
Yes.
announcements?
I wanted to let the commission know that the staff liaison duties for this commission are transferring to Public Works, and that as of next month, your staff liaison will be Jamira, who is right here. And I guess that's it.
Thank you.
I did have a quick comment announcement that something weird happened recently. A friend of mine went to a pen convention. He collects fountain pens down in Los Angeles. And he heard somebody was looking for him. So he went and he said, "Do you know Todd Abbott?" So we've been friends since elementary school. I said, "I'm looking for dirt on him because he's holding up the pickleball courts." So I just wanted to make a statement to all those who are, and I'm pretty sure it's a joke, fine, but it's still strange. I just want to be sure all those who are listening that we've done our job. The pickle dog proposal has been approved by council, and we don't control staff decisions about when things happen. We don't control funding. So if you want to talk to somebody about pickleball, talk to council. That's it.
And then in that same vein, the public comment we heard today clamoring for improvements at the dog park, can staff respond with what from Prop 68 is planned for the dog park and what the timeline is for that?
So Mark Hurley, Public Works Director. So with respect to the dog park and Prop 68, there is a scope of work that was included in Prop 68 that did include repositioning the gate, including the airlock, as well as some additional walkways, concrete walkways and so forth. We are looking at amenities. We're also looking at a water line. Part of it is trying to figure out where we can get a potable water line, not just an irrigation line to bring out, and that might be a limiting factor. We're also looking at drainage. What is that? That's the southwestern corner. Just gets really mushy. Part of that's because it's interconnected. The irrigation system for that area is tied in for the baseball field, so it's not separated. So that's one of the things we're going to look at, separating it, as well as providing some drainage in that low area so it doesn't get so wet. So we're looking at all of this. Our hope is we can fund it all within our Prop 68 funding, and if not, then we'll come up and say, here's the gap, and then try to deal with that. We're also looking at fencing changes to one of the things that's come up during discussions have been foul balls coming into the ballpark, so we're looking at netting and things of that sort that can be added to it. So these are, in my mind, things to make it from the informal dog park to dog park. And I think it largely fits in with what we had programmed with Prop 68. And if there's a shortfall, we'll come back and discuss how we close that gap. With respect to timing, one of the struggles we've had is just with staffing, and we have a position that was approved as part of this fiscal year, and we're actively trying to recruit for that position. I'm also looking to bring in a project manager to help execute not only the dog park, but it would be the dog park, the pickleball, as well as the pedestrian lighting at Memorial Park, and do that more in the short run. but I don't have a schedule
Okay.
to talk about, but that's short run, meaning this year.
Actually, I don't think we should be discussing it. It's okay for now.
Okay, thanks.
Being it wasn't agendized, I don't know if we can really drill down.
Thanks for responding to that public comment.
Sure.
I was going to ask if you could respond to the comment about trash cans. Is there a reason?
So, yeah, trash cans, that would be one of the amenities we're looking at to include.
Clarification.
I think one of the challenges we have with trash cans right now, putting it further into the park, is that a trash can full of dog bags is very heavy, and dragging it across what is usually a sort of a wet field gets difficult from just a management perspective. So the trash cans have typically been on the outside of the park near the street, and realize that's probably not the best location, and hopefully we can improve on that with the new configuration of the park.
Thank you.
I don't know if you can tell me if this isn't appropriate to ask, but the follow-up about the pickleball is just wondering if what the sort of obstacles are for the pickleball. Is it just the staff?
Just staffing.
We have the money and the funding and all of that?
So it's similar to all the Prop 68 projects. We have what I believe is a reasonable scope for the budget that we have. And I think particularly in the pickleball, there was, I think we clearly have enough to get the pickleball courts in there. And then there was questions about, can we improve the lighting? Can we do some of these other things? And that might be a conversation of, once we get some better costs, coming back and saying, hey, here's what we can do for this amount, here's what we can do for this amount, how do we close the gap, or where do we think, okay, that's good.
I guess I'm just wondering if we don't, because has the staff position been open since this last fiscal year, so starting July 22?
Yeah, so there's been
It's
some,
open.
it's taken some time to work through, get it put, we didn't have the staff, this position, and so we created a new PD, we went through that process, and it's getting posted this week.
Oh, okay, so it hasn't been.
It's in the works,
Okay.
We're not sitting on anything.
No, I just wondered if you just weren't able to fill it, or if it hasn't been posted.
No,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And, that when it gets posted, we are going to advertise and push hard to get it filled as quickly as we can. But also investigate getting a contractor on board to help manage this piece.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. With that conclusion of announcements and updates on previous agendized items, okay. We'll move on to presentations. First one is 5-1, pilot curb and gutter pass-through bulb out design presentation.
James is here to provide the presentation.
Oh, great.
Just give me a second. This is my first time up here. Just want to make sure I am presenting correctly. Good evening, Commissioners. My name's James Sorelli. I'm one of the Public Works Engineers. Tonight I'm going to talk about the pilot curb and gutter pass-through bulb out. But before I kind of dive into that, I just want to bring it back a little bit and talk a little bit about the sidewalk repair program and talk through some of, the complications and how we work around trees. So, sidewalk repair program, we're doing right now what we call the critical repair plan. This was approved by Transportation Commission last year. We had a sidewalk survey, and out of that, we were able to identify the worst of the worst conditions on our sidewalks in the city. So beginning with phase 5 in August of last year and going through phase 8, which is scheduled for fall this year, we're working through those locations. And to some people, it might not be a surprise as an Albany resident, but a lot of these sidewalk issues are directly the result of tree growth. So, in Albany, we generally have pretty narrow planter strips, with the exception of some of our west-east streets. So trees are confined by either the back of the face of the sidewalk, or the curb. So this is an example that's pretty common when we're doing sidewalk repairs. There's just not enough room for the tree, and it starts lifting the sidewalk. So one of our common strategies is simply to curve the sidewalk away from the tree, give it more room. And there are some constraints to this. By ADA, we are required to have a minimum of 48 inches, 4 feet. And that can be complicated sometimes because of property lines or private landscaping. And so this is an example of about a 4-foot wide sidewalk at the narrowest part. Don't include back of sidewalk walkways. For example, for a casual observer, you might say, well, this is definitely wider than 4 feet because you can get around on the private walkway. We do not consider that the path of travel. We have no control over that in the future. Who knows what a homeowner might do? So when we're designing this, it's purely what's within that, sidewalk footprint, not what's considered at the back of sidewalk. So here's an example where we're looking at private landscaping. We were able to curve the sidewalk away from the trees, create these nice tree wells. But there are times when this private landscaping would complicate our construction where we can't really get that 4 feet minimum. Here's another example. This one is on Solano. This is an area where actually we try to go for 5 to 6 feet, which we were able to get here, and we were able to widen the tree well, and this was a pretty nice one because this tree definitely needed a lot more room than what was given when it was planted. And of course, there's a lot of complications that we don't see until we actually start construction. Let me bring up my laser pointer. So you can kind of see here, we're seeing a bit more of a sharp curve compared to those gentle curves from the previous examples. That's because actually when we took out this sidewalk, we noticed a really large root mass right here. If you were to just dig a couple inches, maybe even just 2 inches down from the dirt right here, the roots go pretty much up to here. So we really had to curve that sidewalk back to avoid shaving, cutting, pruning, really hurting the tree. We were fortunate here because this is an example of a location where the back property line is actually right around here. So we were able to curve back the sidewalk to maintain a 4-foot path here, 4-foot width. Otherwise, we would probably have to do some severe damage to this tree. And this isn't always the case. We sometimes can't do this back a sidewalk curve, and it requires us to do a lot of damage or think about tree removals. But we work a lot. We work hard to get away from that strategy. This is another example of a pretty difficult situation with these trees. So to begin with, the city forester, John Hawkridge, he informed us we basically don't want to touch the roots of these trees. These are a very sensitive species. I apologize, I don't know the species off the top of my head as an engineer, but he basically said avoid any touching of the roots. Don't cut, don't prune, don't shave, make sure they're covered, because if not, we might see some pretty quick decline in the tree health. And to complicate matters for this one, when these trees were planted, they were actually planted in these kind of boxes, elevated boxes. You can kind of see the form board here. So the roots grew even more, they grew higher than they typically grow. There were points along this sidewalk where the curb and the sidewalk right next to each other here, there were 6 to 8 inches difference. That's a real significant uplift. And to make matters more difficult is when this driveway was redone, rather than bring down the sidewalk over here, they conformed to the high elevation. So one of the biggest issues is, as you know, when we're putting these in, is a cross slope. Slope this way, we aim for a 1.5% slope. We have tolerance for ADA to go to up to 2%. We try to avoid that for, don't want to be right on the nose with this kind of construction. So you can imagine if we're 8 inches up on this side and we need to maintain 2%, we need 400 inches of steadily coming down this way. That's about 30 plus feet. we can barely fit 5 feet of sidewalk in some of our city. So, to get this to work, we had to talk to the property owner. The only way to keep an elevated sidewalk was to remove any connection to the curb. I know you might be familiar how sometimes on sidewalks you'll see it pretty flush, and then when it gets to the curb, it sharply goes down. That is not compliant with ADA, and to put a new sidewalk in, if we were to do that, it's non-compliant. We can get in a lot of trouble for that. So we spoke to the homeowner basically about removing all this concrete parallel to the curb and having a really open planter strip. Some homeowners do not like this. They do not like maintaining those planter strips, so they would absolutely refuse. We were very fortunate in this situation that he was on board, and we were able to curve the sidewalk, keep that higher elevation, make all our ADA cross slopes compliant, avoid touching the roots because of how much room we were able to push the sidewalk over, and really fit in what was very difficult. And, that's a lot of work for just one location. We know there's a lot of time and a lot of coordination that goes into this. This is one location in one phase. We did somewhere in the ballpark of 70 to 80 locations last year. So we really do try hard to make sure we can, have the tree removals as an absolute last resort. We really do try to work with the trees to the best of our ability. And we were very fortunate that everything aligned in this situation where I think we got a really great result. It was a beautiful sidewalk and a nice permeable planter strip. Now, in terms of where we are with the sidewalk program, we're going into phase 7 right now. It's the northeast section of the city. And one thing we're trying is what we call holistic repairs. So street trees, they do damage beyond the sidewalk, curb damage, asphalt roadway damage. So we thought while we are in the area with a contractor mobilized, rather than just focus on the sidewalk, we would use funding to other funding sources to also repair the curb and street rather than kick the can down the road on these repairs. Now, there's some trees that make this complicated, and we've heard a lot of opposition to tree removals in this particular neighborhood at both pros and at council. So shoot trees in particular, we are trying what we call a pilot curb and gutter pass-through bulb out to do these repairs without having to remove the tree. So these curb and gutter pass-through bulb outs are basically put in, again, where a street tree has done more than just sidewalk damage, where the curb cannot be replaced without bulbing it out or removing the tree and putting it straight back. And it's a relatively flat street where bulbing out is going to complicate drainage. So this pass-through bulb out, it would allow drainage to continue to flow in the desired direction. And as another plus, it would actually create some space for the roots to grow without creating a hazard in the roadway or irregular surfaces as they do now. Since this is built within, what's traditionally the road right away, it would require some dedicated space. That means, that you're no longer would be able to park adjacent to this tree. And there would be some additional red carpeting to make sure the inlets to this bulb out are not blocked. So this is the engineering detail of the bulb out. I don't want to go through all this. What I want to focus first on is this isometric view. So looking inwards at the bulb out this way. This is what I mean when I say a pass-through bulb out. Normally a bulb out connects to the curb. It's one monolithic piece. This is what I mean when allowing flow to continue. So in essence, it's a bulb out that has, these portions cut out in a different surface in the center. This is a decomposed granite surface that would be stabilized and compacted, DG. And then we have cobbles that would be put at the entrance and exits for energy dissipation reasons. And this is kind of what I meant by we can't put the curb back. This is, the idea is you have this tree that's overgrown the curb, and putting it back is impossible in a straight line unless we bulb it. And also this bulb out, when we design it, it will be painted red, and it will have some reflective markings on top. Minimum of 5 reflective markings that will be affixed to the top to make sure that it's visible to oncoming traffic. It isn't technically in, the shoulder or the parking space lane, but we still want to make sure it's visible to anybody. So to kind of get an idea of what this looks like, it's more or less like this. We have this bulb out that's not connected to the curb, adjacent to the tree. And in that bulb out would be the DG instead of that asphalt. We'd be able to tear all that asphalt out. And similarly at San Carlos would be the same idea. You can actually see, to some degree, the significant amount of ponding that's here, and even a little bit of like a check dam on the left side of the picture that results from the roots. The sunken curb, all of that. And this is, I believe, at least a day after a rain. I don't remember what storm exactly, but there's a significant amount of ponding here, and this is a bulb out here has exacerbated a lot without this idea of it being passed through. And one thing I do want to say is these bulb outs are strictly piloted right now for flat streets. This is not a design that would work on more streets with more slope, specifically because we'd have to design it differently. We're talking about a different energy, different shear velocity of flow coming down a steep slope that would actually probably, this current design wouldn't work. It would create probably a mess, things would fall apart. This is designed for a flat street, relatively flat street. None of our streets are true flat. So right now we're looking to start construction on this repair phase in May. The curb and gutter pass-through bulb outs will be built sometime between May and July. We've already received a commission approval for this phase and council approval as well for bidding. In a couple of weeks, we'll have the construction contract awarded. And that's it. That is my presentation. And I'll open it up to questions.
Questions? Go ahead, Julie.
First of all, while I'm pulling them up, thank you so much for that presentation, and it was great, like really bright size, and appreciate the visuals and your explanations. I have a question about, this is sort of a comment too, but about that one example you had where it was clearly a lot of time that was taken to try to figure out how to not impact that tree. It looked like not that big of a tree. And I'm just, this is something I just think we should consider as a city. It's like, I appreciate that the end result was a bigger planting strip, which will accommodate any larger tree or, future trees. But I'm just wondering, was there any sort of ranking as to what kinds of trees ought to be given more attention, if that makes sense? Because if it's like a 3-year-old tree, right, that's different than like a 40-year-old tree with a large canopy. I'm just wondering, because I just want to make sure the energy we're expending on whether or not a tree should be saved is commensurate with the value that we place on that tree.
So this tree's age, I don't know. And this species is a bit unique, so it doesn't grow the same way as, say, a camphor does. But I know this is at least a 10 to 15-year-old tree, probably older. And to be honest, this is a pretty appropriate tree for this kind of planter strip. I mean, most trees really shouldn't get much bigger than this if they're being planted in these narrow planter strips. And generally, in terms of the effort, we make a similar effort to really anywhere we can. This was just a case where we just had a lot of flexibility to get this to work. Most of the times we don't have this kind of flexibility. We have, narrow right-of-ways that we just can't push the sidewalk back. Or we have a homeowner who just says they want concrete back. There's some examples where we could definitely expand the planter strip, but it's clear that they put in a lot of things to make sure they had to do as little maintenance as possible in his. So going back to your question, we really do, it doesn't really matter the type of tree. We really try our best to do as much as possible as we can that is allowable within the footprint that we're working with.
I have a question, though, about that ownership. I know that some, maybe not this property, but some of those properties, there is the city that goes beyond, even into the property, a little, even into what the owners might construe to be their property, right? Is that considered, from the sidewalk into the home? Usually there's like at least a couple feet that's actually city but the owners basically plant landscaping right there. You know what I'm talking about, right? Just curious about whether or not you can have those conversations, because that is a city, it is still city boundary, right?
Yeah, there's an example, I guess, in this one. Technically, we could have torn out their succulent garden here if we wanted to give it more room, but we have to balance, there's a lot of balancing going on here. We were able to give it the tree at least a foot of space, and we didn't think it would really benefit from us ripping out their very nice succulent garden to get an extra 6 inches or so.
No, I understand in that case. I'm just wondering generally if those conversations could be had. I'm just wondering, I'm just curious, as staff, do you not want to broach that? I mean, because I imagine that some people might not even know
If
that
it comes down to a tree removal is when we typically would.
Okay.
And then, because technically, it's the homeowner's sidewalk, it's their responsibility, so they can better balance whether, do I want this private landscaping, or do I want the tree removed in front of my house? And which one would I rather support? And we kind of lean on that in that kind of situation. We generally, fortunately, have not had that many situations where it's a private landscaping issue. Typically, when we do get to a tree removal, it's just because there is no right-of-way left for us to move back.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Commissioner Abbott? Commissioner Vincent?
I just had a question about, is there any sort of discussion about structural soil under sidewalks, tree-lined sidewalks and stuff like that?
No, I mean, to my understanding, structural soil, and, Mark, please come up here if I'm misspeaking engineering-wise. Structural soil is something you look at when you first do all this kind of planting, and to kind of, I guess, retrofit, in a sense, would require probably a lot of excavation and work that goes beyond just a simple repair that we're trying to do.
Right. Yeah, it is hard to do after the tree's already planted and started growing, but I guess what I'm talking about is future sidewalk renovations and things like that where there's not trees. I guess a city standard detail.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it may go a bit beyond the sidewalk repair program, because we're talking a little bit about new sidewalks or new trees. New sidewalks, we're not really getting any new sidewalks, but new trees, that would be something really, I guess, our forester would be looking at. And with Mark, if you want to tune in at all, please do.
Well, want to wait until we have that discussion right now, just in clarification comments. But yeah, that's a good discussion to come up. So let's just take clarification.
Okay.
Can you say a little bit more about the choice of decomposed granite there, which is notorious for being flown away, drifting with water?
So it was a little difficult of a decision to what we wanted. One of the reasons we went with decomposed granite is because we know people were inevitably going to walk through this. And we were looking at a finer cobble that we would compact, but that doesn't do well with foot traffic, even though it does seem to hold up maintenance-wise better. We didn't want to do that. And again, this is a pilot. We're not expecting shearing flows here because, again, this is a relatively flat street. This kind of goes back to what I was saying. If this was more of a slope street, we'd have to redesign this. Because these are relatively flat, we don't think we'll see the flow that would allow such, high shear velocity that will pull it all away. We're hoping that it being stabilized with a stabilizer solution, we're going to see minimal, and that's also why the cobbles are here and why it's 2 inches deeper than the cobbles. Is we'll get some energy dissipation from the cobbles before it hits the DG, and for the DG to leave, it needs to go above 2 inches at the exit. So. It's, again, a pilot, so we'll see, but we think this is a good design to start with to avoid it just shearing away.
I guess I didn't realize that the cobbles were actually higher than the...
Yeah, so they're, if you can see at the bottom, section BB.
Oh, there it is,
It's about 2 inches deeper.
Okay, all right, yeah, no, good, thanks.
So that's our way to hopefully avoid that situation.
Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it.
That DG is stabilized as well, right? So that helps.
Yeah, we'll use a stabilizer solution.
Okay, other questions? Commissioner Martin? I have a few questions, and thanks for that section. I was wondering if the soil rose up to that curb, but it looks like it does. Let's see. Well, so you settled on the DG, and did you look at porous pavers as an option?
No, we were purely looking at just a pretty simple, one material DG. It's easy to put in, it's easy to maintain. So we were really just we kind of based this a bit off of, pulled it a little bit from rain garden style. So we weren't really looking at like a porous paver kind of look.
Okay. Then the other question was when homeowners resist to getting an enlarged planter that you're creating by pushing the sidewalk, perhaps DG there or porous pavers so they don't get was that discussed rather than?
Usually no, because the main situation is then, we're gonna have this tree with mulch and dirt, and then next to it's gonna be DG. And then they're gonna have to maintain DG, which they might not want to. They're just gonna go back to the point where they don't wanna maintain anything. They want it as simple as possible, and concrete allows that kind of condition. And ultimately, they are responsible for the sidewalk in front of their house, so their property. So, what they want is, we're willing to just take their word.
Okay, thanks.
But a follow-up, have you offered DG though? I mean, if they saw it, I'm just curious if that's something we could offer homeowners, because.
We have not. It will probably complicate repairs a little bit because it's an additional material, and we're looking at concrete contractors, not typically landscape contractors. But it's an idea. Just we don't think if they don't want porous space, they're going to want the concrete back. Most homeowners are okay with expanding. I've had a few situations where they are okay giving the tree a little bit more room with the understanding that that may prevent some short-term to even long-term damage, but that's kind of as far as they'll ever want to go in terms of taking out concrete.
Thank you. Any more questions? Public, any questions from?
Yes, we do have one member of the public.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Jeremiah Garrett Pinguello here again. So my questions are, has anybody considered or thought about using rubber sidewalks as a pilot program, just to compare and contrast, the longevity of these projects, right? So I think one example in Albany is the rubber sidewalk on Solano and San Pablo, right in front of the old Subway and that record shop, right? So I think rubber sidewalks could be good, around these trees, because they would allow for the root to kind of grow, but it wouldn't crack the sidewalk. So that was my question. If anybody's considered using rubber sidewalks during some of these pilots, just so that way we can get some data on how rubber works or how cement works. Also, the 405 Canes project, it looks like this is the second time there's been a project there, because the pavement looks like it's already been repaired in that parking spot due to the lighter color concrete. So I'm wondering, how much did it cost last time that was repaired? And then what are the costs for both of these projects? I don't see any costs here or any numbers, but what is the cost going to be here for the 405 Canes project? Because this is going to be the second time, and potentially there's going to be a third time. And that's a pretty big tree. So how much money are we spending, for this 405 Canes project? Is it upwhere near $100,000, for this one tree? So those are my two questions: the costs and also a rubber sidewalk. Thank you.
Any more comment?
No, that's it.
Can you respond to Jeremiah's questions?
Yeah, so we have, thought about using different materials. The main reason we do not, there's a couple of reasons, but the main reasons we don't pursue alternate materials like rubber is, at the end of the day, based on the law, the adjacent property owner is responsible for the sidewalk. If we were to put in a different material, now they have to have a contractor who can fix the concrete portion as well as this, unique material. We're basically giving them a burden. They'd have to pay more money to maintain a sidewalk that we put in. So we generally avoid that for that specific reason. We don't want to burden the homeowner with an expensive repair in the future if it needs to get redone. There is, in terms of 405 Canes, we have not repaired the street there in the past. The asphalt work there was just what happened during whatever previous paving work was done. So there's no specific street repair for this tree. This would actually probably be the first time we're doing a site-specific street repair. I believe the property owner has done sometime in the past, they have repaired that sidewalk. So we are doing the sidewalk a second time. In terms of cost, I do not have the costs readily available, but we are definitely not looking at $100,000. It is significantly less than that. Sidewalks are typically somewhere around $20 to $25 per square foot in the previous phases. And these curb and gutter bulb outs we're estimating them to be less than $10,000 each, but it is unique. So construction prices are constantly fluctuating recently, but we don't expect it to be anywhere in the ballpark of $100,000.
Thank you. So given that, I think we'll bring the conversation back to the commission. So tonight, you're just presenting this for our information, right? We're not,
Yes.
and if we have any comments that might improve it, or you're taking comment, correct?
It's mostly for informational, because this design's actually already out for bid.
It's already done, okay, so, okay. All right, well.
I wanted to thank you for the presentation and taking the time to also walk us through a bunch of designs that are not this bulb out, just to show us and the public the lengths that the city goes to try to preserve trees and design around trees, and just all the little decisions that never come before us, that we never see those trees before us because you guys did the job to figure something else out to make it work. And so I think we're all interested to see how this new idea works to try to preserve some of our bigger, bulgier trees there that are more established, taking over the curb, and what can be done. One suggestion I would have is if this comes before us again, that just a little thing, but I think it would help the public out, would be for the title of the talk, of the item in the agenda, to mention something about trees. So that's the main reason why it's coming before us, is because we deal with the removal of street trees and we vote on those. And your presentation was all about street trees. So people looking at our agenda some of them are very interested. Some of the most heated discussions we've had in the last year have been about street trees and trying to preserve them. So putting something about trees in a title that's about trees would, I think, would help the public kind of know that they could tune in on this and see what's being done, the great things that are being done by our Public Works Department. I think that's about it for me. Thank you.
So, yeah, I had a lot of kind of input, but I guess the ship has sailed, so I'm a little disappointed. So I guess that's my comment. Does this come before us? We got a chance to comment, and I never...
This went before the Transportation Commission.
Yeah, I saw it at the Transportation Commission as I was just watching as a member of the public, and I was like, wow, that should come before us.
Yeah,
So I think it would have been good if it had come before us.
I think Commissioner Benson's introduction of the structural soil conversation could go a long way, too. We do a lot of streetscape repairs in our firm. And the structural soil definitely plays a role in letting those tree roots get to other areas without heaving the sidewalks. Maybe you want to add more to that, but yeah.
I do want to, if I may, one of the, I do want to point out that we do put AB down in the road because it's still technically within the roadway. So there really isn't too much digging we can do in terms of structural soil. If we were to do structural soil, under the layer of DG is AB, which is typical of a road design.
Yeah, that's true. That does help. And also it seemed, and while I appreciate your sensitivity with the landowners, I'm always wondering what that line is, because it's both the landowners, but it's also a city tree. And I think sometimes we're just, I don't know if this is the wrong thing to say, overly sensitive, because the 6 inches of succulents, they grow very fast. And that 6 inches to the tree is a long-term investment in the city's tree system, whereas the succulents, 4 months, they're grown. But anyway, that's my comments. I could go on, but that's not the agenda item. So thank you, but I do appreciate the presentation. One last question. On that matrix of the repairs, it had a term, it said, whatever, I couldn't figure out what it was. Oh, the NOBOT, N-O-B-P-O-T, what does that stand for?
So there's some strange acronyms we use in the GIS classification of repairs. We have two we work off of. There's no POT, which means no best path of travel. It's a definition we use for sidewalks where there's multiple issues, including at least 1 2-inch vertical offset. And then we have no PARs, which are no non-planar access routes where we're talking about slopes that are too extreme that wouldn't meet ADA compliance.
Thank you. Very thorough. Appreciate it. With that, we'll move on. Item 6, discussion of possible action on matters related to the following items. 6-1, sugar sweetened beverage tax. Could you present that item, Isabel?
Yeah, so this continues the item that you started at the last meeting. The goal for tonight is for the commission to complete your recommendation for the use of sugar sweetened beverage tax funding for the study session that will occur at this, which is tentatively scheduled right now for the second meeting in April of the City Council meeting. And in your packet, you should have found a draft of a recommendation based on the discussion you had at the last meeting.
Okay. So let's open that up, sorry.
May I ask, if this is time for questions?
Please.
I noticed that it's significantly, I probably asked this last time and I forgot, but it's significantly lower this year than last year. Why is that? Is it just anticipated? Is it because the...
No, the anticipated amount is the same as last year.
Okay.
It's just that there are unspent funds that the council chose to use last year.
Got it,
Yeah.
got it. So last year was elevated from previous years.
Exactly.
Got it, okay, that makes sense.
I had a question. Is the sand, my memory is failing me, the sand volleyball court, is that something that came up before, or is that new that you added in between our last meeting and this meeting?
No, this was part of your discussion at the last meeting.
And then the presentation that we have on the sand volleyball court, is that new?
This is something that Commissioner Frank asked to share.
Yeah, and question, do we need to include dollar amount estimates for any of these?
It's preferable so that council has an idea of how much funding would need to be allocated for these projects.
Any other questions that people?
Yeah, one more question. Looking at the items that were approved for last year and presumably carried through, at least those, are there any metrics? Like, do we know how many people enrolled in the Healthy Me music and movement? Do we know how many people participate in the bike safety program?
Yeah, those are provided at the study session, so that information is available at the council meeting
time,
from
okay.
last year, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so what are we actually doing? We're voting on approving this.
Is this our last meeting to decide?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Chair, can I just show a couple pictures from the sand volleyball court research I did?
Is that answering questions, or is
No,
that?
I didn't know if he was moving on. I
Oh,
thought
I
he said
don't
we
know.
were going to vote on something. Oh,
We
maybe.
haven't had any
Okay,
public.
sorry,
We haven't
never
had any
mind.
public comment yet, so.
Yep.
Yeah, let's go
wanna
to
do
public comment.
Okay.
Do public comment.
see.
Okay.
Yes, we have one public comment.
Good evening, Jeremiah here again. Yeah, so I think the Move and Groove is really great, right? I think that's in April. I forget the date, but yeah, I think that's in April. So yeah, that's really mess around everything. And so I just want to say, I know you guys are voting to approve this already. That's great. Things are happening so fast. I mean, we're getting things done, getting things checked off and moving forward, which is great. But I was just gonna extend for my public comment earlier, the water, drinking fountains, possibly on the Albany Greenway. I know I found one drinking fountain on the Albany Greenway the other day. So maybe we can have more on, drinking fountains on the Albany Greenway. But the dog park thing with the water fountain, I'm not sure we can incorporate that water fountain with some of this funding because, people go to the dog park, you're getting exercise. I don't know who gets more exercise, me or my puppy. To tell you the truth, I think I might be getting more exercise. So maybe going to the dog is actually, it's good use of money to have a water fountain area. And that's exactly what we want to do with the sugar sweetened beverage taxes, is to get people to drink more water, make water available everywhere. So that way people are hydrated and don't drink sodas and sugar sweetened stuff. So that's about it. Basically the water fountains, maybe some of this money can go toward the Memorial Park Dog Park to get some drinking water there. So that's about it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so looking at this list, we could add and detract from this still.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
This is a working draft.
But it does say unanimously approved, assuming we all approve it, and there's no dissension.
Oh, yes, this is a draft, and it's based on last year's, so.
Okay, so we're just, okay, right.
This is what you would be presenting, yes.
Yeah, so it might not be unanimously, but all right, okay, last year. So anyone, let's reach out to the commission. Anyone feel this list is good? You want to add something?
And I would just let you know that there are two documents, they say they're the 2023, but one of them is 2022. Are you sure you're looking at the?
That's what I was
Okay,
getting
it's very
confused on. That's what I was tripping over, yes.
Yeah, look at the
exactly.
date on it. March 9th, 2023 is the one I'm looking at. That is
Yeah,
the
that's
draft.
why I was thrown for a loop there for a second. Okay, yeah.
I would say that I'm happy with all the items that are on the draft thing there, and I don't think I don't think we should feel compelled to look at what was approved last year and recommend all these things that, crossing guards and whatever, that'll get, somebody else will put that out there, the city council will put that out there. The run, I don't think, there was a time when that idea was pitched to us and we helped put it on but no one's come to us to ask for money for that. So I don't think it's our place to put money for Move and Groove if it hasn't been asked for. But I like all the things here, and I would like to hear more about the sand volleyball court. I've looked at the presentation, and It looks really compelling to me. I would ask if the city has control over that parcel of land?
No, it's state-owned.
So it's East Bay Regional Parks, or it's state?
Well, it's
or
state-owned, managed by East Bay Regional Park.
So it's not part of the portion of that region that's owned and maintained by the city?
No.
So if we wanted to put something there, what would be the process, do you know?
It's like anything else on, yeah. Do you want to, or?
Do you want to do
I
your
mean,
presentation?
it's basically
first?
like anything else. We'd have to work collaboratively and ask the state for permission and to change the beach area. But I don't have a specific process or time frame, or I'm not, I don't know exactly if they would even think that it's a good idea and want to move forward with this. I don't know any of that
Okay.
information. Would have to be researched.
I think it's a great idea. I think they'd be excited. I think they want to jump on it. So I think we should advance that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is sort of my question to staff earlier was if we're not able to, if that's not in our purview, I don't even know how that would make sense to ask for that funding on property that we
That we don't
can't
own.
have any, we don't have any jurisdiction over. So I don't know if that's even just a moot point, and slide deck doesn't even need to be shown. But what was I going to say? I would just, one comment from the public about the drinking water funding. I don't think we're prepared for that right now, so we're not sure if we're going to need it, if we might have enough money from the state funding. So I would not want to do, dog park water bottle funding or water line funding if we don't know if we can make that. But yeah, I think the question though, and thanks Commissioner Bryan or Commissioner Martin for your support of the sand volleyball court. Director Hurley did look into that though, right? Can you talk a little bit about the sand volleyball court quote you received? And I guess that's for starting from scratch somewhere, right? Putting that somewhere, if you don't mind.
Yes, so the sand volleyball court quote that I put together was somewhere on the order of $25,000, could be $30,000. It was just rough order of magnitude. And I didn't get specific quotes, but what I did is we had a quote that to redo the infield at Ocean View Park, and that's kind of like building a sand volleyball court. We're bringing in a lot of dirt, excavating out, leveling it out, the different. So I used that as a basis for a quote, then looked at, okay, what are poles and installation costs for that? So, if there's no other complications, it's about $25,000 plus or minus.
Now, in this case, I'm no expert, but just looking at the pictures of what Julia put together.
On the beach?
On the beach, it looks pretty darn flat to me. It seems like it's just going to be the poles. I can't imagine much more than that.
And this just is my working around beaches, particularly in that area that has multiple jurisdictions. I can imagine there's a whole lot more than just the cost of putting the poles in. I think you're right that the cost of putting the poles in is probably fairly nominal, but I imagine getting to the point where we could do that is more than the cost of installing it.
Yeah, I mean, just Commissioner Martin, I asked the vendor that question, and I did say, what about a beach surface? Like, what would be the installation costs? And yeah, I think that's like very low. Like he said, like it's $2,000, just dig up the trench and put it in. So that for it, a beach situation where you don't need any leveling off, it would be very low cost. But whether or not we can even put them there is the bigger question.
I would, I put together a cost for installing poles in like a grass area, and I would figure that would be and it was like a $5,000 cost. I figured, my view is construction crew, it takes a day, so that's a day. You buy the crew for a day. It's about $5,000. Might be a little less, might be a little more, but that would be the order of magnitude for both grass or a beach.
But when you asked the vendor for that cost, the 2025, was that including sand, like importing sand
So
somewhere?
I didn't necessarily, yeah, so this was, I didn't ask for, I need a volleyball court. I took the vendor, our cost to redo the infield of a baseball field. And then added the cost of the poles and things of that sort, since it would be about the same cost.
So you'd assume it would be about the same, okay.
Yeah,
Even with the sand
I
cost?
didn't get a specific quote. What I did
Sure.
is pulled it together from various sources, and, if you told me it was 35, I'd say okay. If you told me it was 15, I'd say probably okay too.
Okay, okay.
I would, to me, it seems like it's worth pursuing, particularly if the city council, approves the funding for it, which I think sounds like it could be very modest, and that I think what we've seen with the private dog park under the freeway, that was a situation where a business owner was able to get approval to fence off an area of Caltrans land. They've completely redone the landscaping there, and they're covering over whatever was there. They're doing all these things to it, and seemed like it was trivial for them to get approval to do that. This also seems like one of the lowest impact things you can imagine to do on a beach. So I would encourage the city to go with head held high and with the wind behind your back, and so to have no fear approaching these other agencies. It could be no problem whatsoever. And I wouldn't assume that it's some horrible thing, and I would hate to see city staff advise the city council when this comes before them that working with other agencies or state agencies is impossibly hard.
So the bulb, I gotta say, is unique because we're going through some regulatory process with both we would need to get approval from, I might imagine, the water board as well as the Alameda County Environmental Health that regulates the landfill. They're very sensitive about any digging anywhere around the bulb. So it's not unheard of, but it's very complicated. Any digging down there is very complicated, even if it's just a pole.
Okay.
It seems for me that the better avenue is just to advocate with East Bay Regional Parks for that. I don't see why the city of Albany really needs to be involved. It's going to be inexpensive, and they're going to be. It's the liability and the regulatory hoops is where the expense is going to be.
Right.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mark? No. All right. Thank you for now. So the question remains about, let's go back to the list, see what we're.
Yeah, sorry, I have a question for Isabel. Just wondering about this idea. I mean, obviously, Albany Bulb is not something we could answer tonight or even, think about at this point. But what other areas would you see a sand volleyball court there being a potential for in the city?
Well, I think for me, the most obvious one would be the grass area behind Ocean View. But again, I think there's drainage issues, and it would probably, that would have to be evaluated to see how much it would cost to fix those issues and put a volleyball court there. There's actually holes there that somebody can use and put a net there right now, and it's a grassy field. So maybe that's the easiest of the locations
that's interesting.
to consider.
Why don't people use that? Any reason? It's just muddy? Go ahead.
It's dark, it's cold, and even though it's a grass surface, it's a very uneven grass surface. It's not one easy to twist an ankle on.
So that's, right.
But not a bad place for sand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if.
Yeah.
And the University Village cats would love it.
So, Mark, sorry to bring you up, but do you feel, if you've done any research into that, if that was what you were envisioning, and I'm wondering if you think sand might be more hospitable to like the drainage issues,
So my sense in that, and we did walk that area, I think we would have to do some sort of under drain in that area to try to, and it looked like that might be possible. The one concern I did have with the sand is that, so on the, was it the north side, we have those redwoods, and anything coming off of that's gonna land in the sand, and I just don't know over time, that would have to be a court that people are really gonna wanna play on all the
Yeah.
time and be really a sand beach volleyball type thing. That might be a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
But it's, other than that, on a nice sunny day, it is a delightful location.
Thanks. If there's any other-
Okay, so we have the option of having a sand volleyball court, but
Sorry,
yeah,
I
go
have
ahead.
another question. So it seems like if we were to go down, if not this, I know the city doesn't want to take this on, but if somebody in the public were to research or reach out to the East Bay Regional Parks and say like, oh, they're up for this, would a less than $5,000 budget item be something that the Parks Department itself could absorb? I'm just wondering if that's something we always have to, because it seems relatively modest, right?
No, any projects that would be cited on, on property other than the city would have to be approved by the city council.
I see. Okay.
Maybe going through, is it Elizabeth Eccles, I think, is our elected representative in the East Bay Regional Parks District. So I think it'd be good to pitch it to her. And is there somebody in the city that would be good to interface with her? Or is that just something a member from the public, like one of us, would do? Or
If it's a desire of the commission or as a resident of Albany, you want to, talk to her about it, I don't see why not.
okay.
Back to that question that Commissioner Chang Frank mentioned, if we did the sand volleyball court at Ocean View, could that be done within the budget of Public Works? And do we need to put that as an expenditure on the suite?
Yeah, any changes to parks need to go to the council, so it's not, unless
Right,
it's,
but would it need to be funded by the sugar sweetened?
yes.
It would have to be, okay.
Because right now you're basically working on a recommendation
Okay.
for the city
But
council.
like the portable volleyball court net, which is the next item, we don't need to ask the,
Well, it's a very small amount. It doesn't change the footprint. It doesn't change anything. It's equipment versus changing, the user experience and the landscape of a park.
And then some of the history of that area in the Ocean View Park, where there's currently poles for volleyball, is a few years ago, before this commission, we voted to approve a bocce court there, and it was originally going to be something like $50,000 to set up and install and do all these things. And then once the drainage started getting addressed and landscaping and so forth, pretty soon it was $250,000 to deal with all the drainage issues and so forth. And then if it was going to be sand volleyball there, then you are actually talking about excavating and filling with a new material and all this kind of thing. It's so I can see how that cost could be prohibitive. Maybe it's something the city wants to do, maybe it's something we want to do, but that's some of the history of that park, the budgeting.
The sand might work because it drains, right? It wouldn't be getting muddy, and we fill. But, yeah, there'd still be something with the edging. Okay, so anyone want to take off any of these items? And currently, we have the outdoor recreational equipment at the Lonely Greenway. We have installation of water bottle filling stations at the Lonely Greenway, South Solano Ave, along Solano Ave, and at locations as close to the bulb as possible, Pearson Buchanan, the west corner for Ave. And the third one being installation of water bottle filling stations at Waterfront Park. And then the fourth one being sand volleyball court. I tend to think I'd want to edit number 2. I don't know if we're trying to get water all the way down to Pierce and Buchanan. It seems just, I don't even know what that cost. We don't have, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but we don't have a cost associated with these things yet. So we put these forward, and then, Mark, you put a cost on them, and then they go to council?
What, if you want, I can, yeah. Like what we did last year is basically, we for the recreational equipment, for instance, we had already some quotes from the previous installation, so I ballparked it
Okay.
according to that. Same for some of the bottle, the bottle filling stations, we have installed them as well along, at parks and along the greenway, so we can also provide some idea of funding. But the one at Pierce and Buchanan, I don't believe we provided a funding amount for that because there's a lot of research that need to be done.
And these
to-
do have the tap into the water source, or they come with their own? Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Can I say something about the water bottle filling stations? I think this has been on, actually, I think it should be always a standing item because I think these are good to put around the city. The first couple rounds where we put these in, I think we hit all the sort of straightforward locations to anything that was near a water source. So I think anywhere now, it becomes a little more challenging where we have to go a little further for getting into a potable water source. So that's, I think, it gets kind of very site-specific in terms of cost of how far we have to go.
The Pierce and Buchanan is heavily trafficked for bikes and pedestrians, so, and it would be the closest one to the bulb, and people heading there and towards the Bay Trail, and so I think that's still a good goal.
There's that pedestrian island and the little.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a huge,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not, that's probably the closest to a potable source that we can tap into. I don't know the infrastructure there well enough where to do that, but, and whether we have a meter that we can tap into, because that's the other thing is you might have a line, but we need a service from East Bay Mud.
okay, so, but this is something that was in our request the previous year, so I know it sounds like Public Works is understaffed, but if there's a way to research it enough to look at EB MUD's diagrams or whatever, that would be helpful. One thing I would maybe change on the waterfront park would be to make, on the fourth item there, it says water bottle filling, but I think if we're actually going to put something out there, it would also have whatever you call like dog bowl filling, and they have these multimodal ones. And also, if it's at the beach, you'd want like a shower, or fresh water. People would love that to rinse off when they're in the water. So that would, so it just says bottle filling, but
Did you say shower?
shower.
So
Yeah.
is this a different bullet point?
Well, often they have these posts that are, I guess it's a different post from the water filling, so maybe it's a different,
I agree. If you're going to put water down there, why not put the shower?
yeah. Okay, I guess that'd be another bullet, would be,
I think probably the same bullet.
I mean,
I mean, the-
basically, the cost is to run the line there. So once you're there, just like
Yeah, exactly
bing,
right.
bang, boom.
I think you're 100% right. Once we get water down there, and I don't know if that's a private line out to that, or we extend East Bay Mud system, that gets, but if we're gonna do it, it would make a proper service,
Yeah.
a proper line to fund not just, or to serve not just a drinking fountain, but whatever, irrigation as well, potentially.
So is that what the bullet point is to run water to the waterfront?
Still want to
For
get,
the
well, we don't know.
installation of
we-
bottle filling station with dog bowl and shower?
I think so, yeah, I think
Shower.
that's,
I think that would really change the use down there quite
Oh, yeah.
significantly. And I think more so than I mean, I just think that Pearson Buchanan is so close to people's homes or wherever, it doesn't seem that people carry water everywhere they go, it seems, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I might be totally wrong about that. It just seems putting a water source right on a neighborhood corner doesn't seem as useful as the park or as the waterfront park. And so that money would be better spent trying to explore that. But it might be that installation of the water filling station at the park is a $10 million item, whereas Pearson Buchanan is a $15,000 item. So without the cost, it's hard for me to really.
Well, and also Pierce Buchanan isn't just on a neighborhood corner. It's on, I don't know what that path is called, but that's like a major path to the bay for bikes and
Yeah,
pedestrians.
but it seems like it's before people have actually run out of water. It's like they're just starting their trip. But you're right, maybe they've already traveled 10
They might be coming from
Right.
the Greenway or who knows where they're coming from. so.
Yeah, you're right, right.
It's clearly a compromise. We really want the water,
Yeah, right, right.
Sure,
but it is. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so, and I like the idea of the sand volleyball court, and I think it could possibly work at Ocean View. I wouldn't mind putting that on as an item. And I think maybe talk to the sand volleyball court people. I don't really play sand volleyball, so I don't know if that's a great location, but it seems feasible.
Yeah, I think there might be other areas in the city. I mean, we were, from the master plan, we were talking about areas that are underutilized, like the Key Route and some other areas that we may just not know right now. And so I wouldn't want to I wonder how the city council makes these decisions if they're going to say, oh, we need to know where it's going to be before we fund it. But I do think there's a possibility that we could find a site for it if we had the funding, so.
Pierce
that's
Street
true.
Park is an obvious
True,
one.
yeah, right. So, yeah,
We know that that's in limbo.
Pierce Street Park. There's also the Caltrans land next to the private dog park. That's a lot of open space.
yeah.
It was easy to get a permit for that business owner to put something up there, so.
So that's just the sand volleyball court funding, trying to find a home kind of thing.
Sounds like we have a work plan item.
Basically.
This is not a small lift.
Yeah.
And then I think we would also want to look at, like, what's the specific land the city has control of out at the bulb? And I know there's just like this narrow patch that goes from the freeway out to the neck, and so I don't, maybe even somewhere in there is wide enough for a volleyball court or something. Yeah.
It's always windy down there, too. That's the other thing.
That's beach volleyball, so, yeah.
Okay, so so does this list stay the way it is? We add
I'll tell you, I've worked on this since the very beginning, 5 times or whatever, and I have never had any good ideas. I don't know. I know, one way that we should think about this, in my opinion, is that we're trying to make this tax, this income go down, because that means people are drinking less soda. So what of these would give us less money next year? And I think the water filling stations are an idea, but I don't know. I don't know.
It doesn't always seem correlated.
It doesn't always seem correlated.
With that.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, I do hope that because I'm always thinking, what are they gonna be attracted to? Because we're always putting up the same ones and whether or not they get funded. But I do think sand volleyball court is at least specific.
Yep.
Whereas where we're doing this outdoor recreational equipment on the Lonely Greenway, it's not specific. So hope maybe that'll be. Isabel, how do we, who presents this to?
It will be included in the council packet.
Okay.
So there's no formal presentation by the commission, but if you want to be...
Make comment or something?
Yes, yes, you could attend the meeting and make a comment during
Okay.
the public comment period.
Can you read back to us what we have for the third bullet item? Because I think otherwise everything's unchanged.
I have, 2 things, so you can tell me which one. So just installation of water bottle filling station with dog bowl and outdoor shower at Waterfront Park. Or did you
yeah.
want to,
That's it.
or would you prefer installation of water source at Waterfront Park for water bottle filling station with dog bowl and outdoor shower?
Okay, how about the latter?
Yeah,
Because
the latter's better.
that's really what they're funding.
Okay.
Okay.
I would just mention that another method of advocacy is to talk to the council person who appointed you. That's there. You can talk to them about
Yeah.
your take on this.
Okay, so I guess we will, any more discussion on this item?
Could the commission make a motion?
Right.
Yes. Okay.
I move to approve the items as presented in the packet with the modification of the third item, which Isabel just read out to us. Do we have a second?
I second the motion. I second the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Abbott,
Yes.
Commissioner Bensman,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank,
Yes.
Commissioner Martin,
Yes.
and Chair Kent.
Yes.
And
So that's a unanimous approval. We can keep it as is. And move on to item 6-2, Flex Court Subcommittee recommendation. And Commissioner Chang Frank will present this.
Sure. Isabel, can you pull it? Oh, there you go. Thank you.
while you're getting that ready, I had a quick question for staff is, are we a commission of 5 now, or Isabel, or do you know, are we going to get 2 more from the school board like we've had in the past?
Right, still waiting on that process to be finalized by council for the appointment of Board of Education members.
Okay.
Okay. So we talked about this last time. I'm really just filling in the public. Just go briefly over what we talked about last time. Next slide. So last time we talked about how we were going to propose a pilot volleyball program at Memorial Park. Next slide. And really the idea would be these northernmost tennis courts to put a portable volleyball net system there and see how we could make use, basically make the tennis courts more of a flex multi-use court sports space. Next slide. And
There's a delay, I'm sorry.
okay, sure, no problem.
I'm not sure, it stopped working.
Yeah, I can try to.
There we go.
Okay, so the idea would be to put a portable net up sort of parallel to one of the tennis courts. Next slide. And then this is a picture of the net. And just to be clear, we proposed just purchasing one portable volleyball net that would obviously only displace tennis on one court at a time, at one court period when it's in use. Next slide. And then the net itself, when not in use, would be stored to the side of the northernmost tennis courts. Next slide. And from that meeting, we had 30 public comments. Many of them came through email the days before, a couple days after, in support of the pilot volleyball program, and a couple of public comments against the volleyball program specifically at the Memorial Park tennis courts. Also, we got comments from the public that we wanted to follow up on, one being to research adjustable height net systems that can accommodate tennis and volleyball, and also to consider installing volleyball poles in a grassy area of Memorial Park so it wouldn't displace the tennis. Next slide. So this was a tennis net system that Commissioner Martin found, and the idea would be you would have these poles permanently on the court, and they could be moved vertically up and down for the sport that you're using. And Director Hurley and I both talked to vendors of these systems. And next slide. What we found is the advantages are the poles are stationary, so you don't need to move the net system onto and off of the court. But the disadvantages are, first, that the poles are high even for tennis, and that doesn't accommodate tennis tournament play. Also, the net itself could be compromised by being, moved up and down, and those tournament play tennis nets need to be really, specific and a certain height. So the option would be to potentially swap out the net during this tennis tournament play, but it wouldn't matter because you'd have the high poles, which aren't regulation, and you would actually need a ladder or some sort of tool to change out the net, which would have to be done by a professional staff person and we're really trying to avoid having staff need to maintain any of this equipment. Next slide. Did you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to jump in. If you go back to the previous slide, one thing that, another benefit of this system was that I think where it has 2 there, number 2, that was an intermediate height, which is good for badminton.
Yeah.
So then people can do, 3 sports, but the problem, like you're saying, is that they're not regulation for tennis tournaments.
Right, and yeah, so this is actually a 3-sport net system. Next slide. And then this portable volleyball net system, we wanted to sort of consider the pros and cons of that. And the advantages are you just wouldn't need to mess with the tennis nets or the poles. So it would really just be something you bring in when you're playing volleyball, and the tennis net and poles would remain and would be acceptable for tournament play. The disadvantages are the public does need to move the net system onto and off of the tennis court. But just to note, I did talk with the vendor of one of the systems who said that the caster, or the metal base can be moved easily by like a child or an adolescent because they're like 60 pounds. You can make them heavier, but if we just do what their standard size is by not making it heavier, it's very safe for an adolescent to move. Next slide. So the grass fields at Memorial Park was another comment. Could we just put posts and grass fields? And the grassy areas in Memorial Park that we can consider are the two grass areas that are parallel to Portland, and then also the Memorial Park baseball fields. And I don't know if Commissioner Kent, you want to talk a little bit about how just any kind of volleyball on grass would require significant maintenance of the turf.
Oh, we mentioned that a little bit at Ocean View, that people are looking up when they're playing volleyball, and the ground needs to be level. If it's rutted, you twist ankles and injure yourself. So we can't just put it on a lawn. It will work for a week or 2, but it'll get worn out, and then the surface will have to be prepared or maintained. In addition, the irrigation would continually spray over that bare surface and make it muddy and even worse. So there is a maintenance burden that comes with putting it on lawn. It's not that simple.
Thanks. Next slide. And then in addition to that, the grass area along Portland is frequently used for a lot of pickup games, soccer, frisbee, football, and we really didn't want to touch that area because any kind of permanent poles would just preclude other sports from being played. So we found the disadvantage there to be would just limit sports for other play. Next slide. And then we really want to investigate this Memorial Park baseball field potential for other sports. And so Isabel found a really great system for us to figure out how to figure out the dimensions. These are rough, but from Google Earth, it looks like it's about 300 to 260 feet in terms of size. And I was really trying to figure out what are regulation size high school baseball fields. And apparently, they're not much different from Major League, but they are the minimum. The minimum is at 250 feet from home base to one of the sides. So, but it's ideal to have 300 feet. So I don't really see, unless we're really cutting into the ideal, it doesn't seem like there's room for taking away any of that space. So, yeah. So, and then I could only, given the problems with the grass volleyball field, it would have to be like sand. And then, we have all those issues. So that would require really eliminating the field for any other play. So it didn't seem like a reasonable option, especially for a pilot volleyball program. Next slide. So really, given all those factors, we recommend launching the pilot volleyball program at Memorial Park Tennis Courts, purchasing one volleyball net system, portable volleyball net system to be stored in the northernmost tennis courts, and also to paint volleyball court lines on the northernmost tennis courts, so volleyball can be played with those boundaries. And I think that's it, unless the fellow committee members have any other additions.
Well, other than just to say that the research into the adjustable net can still be, I think, helpful for the courts where the tournaments are not played, like Ocean View and Terrace Park. And so then you could get multi-use out of those for recreational play. But that's not what this is about tonight. Sort of questions?
Questions from,
Thank you. That was pretty complete. Yeah.
okay. Thank you, Commissioner. That's just an information item, no voting, and
No,
that's,
it is, there's a,
yeah.
there's a
We are
vote, yeah,
voting.
because
With public
with public
comment?
comment?
Yes, there's one public comment.
oh, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Jeremiah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm all for all this. I just had one question about the portable volleyball net inside the tennis court at Memorial Park. So, what are we going to do about potential theft, right? What's to prevent somebody from wheeling those things out the gate? I mean, I don't know who would do that. I'm not trying to put a blame on, unhoused individuals, but, what's to, I mean, we could just trust everybody, right? But I'm just wondering, what would stop somebody from just taking the net off and throwing those things out, in the back of a pickup truck or something, when nobody's looking. I think it's a good pilot project to see if we need more. It sounds like it's very light, like you said, so it could be easy for somebody to take it. But also, what about let's say if somebody's running up to the volleyball net and they're going to spike or block or something, and they were to actually run into the net. Would it fall over? What are the liabilities on injuries if the net were just to fall over because somebody, ran into the net? I've played volleyball before, and a lot of times I kind of, bump into the net. So yeah, just curious about, possible theft. And also, the liabilities of the thing falling over, since it's so portable. I really like the option of the tennis court having a longer pole going up and being able to slide the net up and down from tennis to volleyball. Just being able to slide it up, kind of like on a pulley system, like a flagpole. You just pull it and it will go up, and somehow it will go down. But yeah, I just wonder what's going on with liabilities of it falling over, people stealing it. And also, I just really want to say I really like the option of the hybrid tennis volleyball net, on a permanent fixture thing. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
No, that's it.
Okay. Back to the board. Discussion?
For theft, I think Commissioner Chang Frank had at the last meeting, had a nice presentation, which included, I think it was even photos of one of these set up at Oakland High School or Oakland Tech, or which one was it?
Yeah, Oakland High, exactly.
Oakland High, and it's just sitting there in a parking lot. And so, knock wood, I hope, fingers crossed, if it works well there, I think it'll work well here. So that would be, and it's a pilot project. And then he mentioned the permanent poles and allow the net to go up and down. One thing I don't think we clarified is that the high school plays tournaments there, and I think St. Mary's High School also plays tournaments there. So those have to be legit regulation. We can't mess with that. And so these adjustable ones, there's various aspects of it that you just can't make it. The vendor, Mr. Hurley, looked into it, and the vendor said you just can't make it official tennis net. So, but that could be a great thing to put into Terrace Park and Ocean View Park for the 3-sport volleyball, badminton, and tennis combo there. And so that would be something that, yeah, would be something that's not, but that's not up for a vote tonight.
Just, I'm assuming that obviously the volleyball court lines would be different color from just want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I've seen in other courts, but I don't know if Director Hurley has any ideas about that. Yeah. I've seen that other courts just do different colors. Exactly.
How different,
exactly colors.
How different the lines are.
Actually, a lot of indoor gyms even have that. Like
Yeah, I didn't really get into the details. I talked to somebody and gave me a ballpark price, and so if we go that route and want to put the lines down,
You triple the price for blue.
But even if they triple, it's not a huge price. But I think we'll figure that out and do it. I don't know. When we do the pickleball court, maybe we'll lump it in there so we get a contractor that knows what they're doing.
And that doesn't change the regulation requirements for tennis competitions, does it? To have other lines on there?
I don't. You're getting past my my technical knowledge of. Okay. All I know is when our tennis nets are at a plumb, we get lots of complaints. So I'm very sensitive to that.
Yeah. And I think the scope of this pilot project is to include the net, the removable net, but the lines would come at a later date after we've evaluated the pilot project.
Right.
Yeah, that's a question, Isabel. If we wanted to include, because I know you have these budget considerations, would you recommend that we just include that and then see how it goes, and then just so we have it in there?
Because anything beyond that, because it changes the scope of the project and it changes the user experience, on a more permanent basis, then I think it would need a little bit more vetting, and I'm sure there's additional cost associated with.
This might be a little off base, but would you consider adding, like on the sand volleyball? Back in a younger version, I played a little sand volleyball. They had the rope nets, the rope sidelines that you lay out as an interim thing. Get one of those and put it on the court, and if people use it, that's great. If they don't,
yeah, I could see that.
I'm just trying to throw something that gets us a little closer to, something that's a little more regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they can just use the tennis lines. Maybe that's good enough. I don't know.
And I don't know how those match up to volleyball.
I don't know how well they match up either. I don't know. But I think for what we're voting on tonight, I think we should strike the last item there on the recommendations. Is that what I'm hearing, Isabel?
I think so. Yeah, because I don't think we would want to paint the lines until we know that the net works on the courts.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the doubles line might work pretty well. But okay, so with that, any more comments? Someone want to make a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the volleyball program pilot project at Memorial Park tennis courts with purchasing one portable volleyball net to be stored at the northernmost tennis courts. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Second.
All in favor? Well, I guess
Yeah.
I'll call the roll.
take your job away.
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Bensman?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frang?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
And Chair Kent?
Yes. The motion is approved. Flex Court Subcommittee recommendation is accepted.
Nice job, guys, thanks. A lot of work.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, this recommendation is going to council as part of their adoption of the next biennial budget. Yeah.
When is that, do you expect, Isabel, that we should present on this? Or do you think it's just going to be one of those things that's in the budget, just one of the line items, so not a big deal?
That's what I think, yes.
Okay.
Because
Piece
it's a
of-
small amount and
piece of
it's a pilot
equipment.
project. So.
Okay.
Future agenda items. Anyone want to add to the agenda? Any items?
If we were to add the flexible netting for those other two parks, would that need to be a work item, a work plan item, Isabel, or what do you think?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think at this point, anything beyond what's been approved today because of the timing of the budget, it would have to be a work plan item.
Okay, so, but I think we already have a work plan item that deals with flex courts, so we can, it would just be under that. So I guess I would want to see that agendized for getting the multi-use netting for those other parks.
Or is that, because we already looked into it, right? So we don't really even need to discuss it as that. I mean, one thing that we didn't talk about at the last item is that we definitely foresaw our subcommittee, to maintain itself because there's other issues we want to explore, just like what Commissioner Martin said. So do we need to, I guess we don't need to meet as a subcommittee. We already done the research. So I'm just curious about how that agenda
Also, the
item would be.
idea was that we would start the pilot project first,
That's
see
true.
how it goes,
Yep.
see how
Yep.
the reception from tennis players and volleyball players is, and then based on that feedback, you could decide to move forward
Okay,
other parks. So
I
I would.
think, I'm okay with that, to wait and see how the pilot project goes. But what I would say, though, that having the fixed poles is a very different experience from people's experience of having to schlep the portable poles around. So I don't think the pilot would tell us everything about having the fixed poles with adjustable height net. So even if this pilot project doesn't get extended, I think we still should look into the other thing, but I'm happy to, I think you made a good case to hold off on it until we find out, see how this is used. Yeah. Okay, so I don't have anything. Anybody else?
I mean, the pilot program will provide demand. I mean, it'll show the demand of people wanting volleyball. So, I mean, I think it would be a good indicator to proceed with other areas.
What's the timeline on this? So council will
Yeah,
vote this
if it's
month?
approved as part of the budget, the new budget is effective July 1st. So then we would, at some point, order the equipment and put it on the court. And then we also have to figure out if we need to change our reservation process to allow a specific time every week when volleyball players can reserve the court. So there's that other aspect internally that we have to figure out, how to manage both sports on the court.
And would that track how many people are reserving it for volleyball?
If
over the
they
course of a year or
reserve,
something?
yeah, if it's reserved, if it's just drop in, somebody who sees the tennis court empty and they place the net, we won't know about those situations. But if somebody reserves the court specifically for volleyball, then we would know.
Do you see that as a staff level decision, how to deal with that? Or is that something that would come before us?
I think at this point it's administrative, so I think we can figure it out. And that we've gotten some good information as well from your research, so we'll use that.
Okay.
How long do people reserve for tennis?
Usually, well, it's usually 30-minute increments.
Oh, and they can do a couple, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, well, I guess we won't know for several months.
Yeah, it's going to take a while before we get
Yeah.
back to you on that.
Do you know anything, Isabel, for future agenda items on your end?
Well, I think you'll probably start working on your work plan, your new work plan eventually, and I'm sure Public Works staff has
You don't have to
quite a few
smile
things.
quite so broadly when you say that.
quite a few things planned for your future agendas related to projects and things that are on your agenda. I think you'll have 3 applications to review at the next meeting as well.
How soon is the soonest Prop 68 project that would come before us, do you think? Like later this year, maybe? Okay, so within the next 9 months or something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Great. Well, with that, that completes the agenda, and the meeting is, I'll conclude the meeting at this point. Next meeting is Thursday, April 13th at 7 PM here. Something to hit.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.